Welcome back to What Gets Measured, a NinjaCat podcast about marketing performance management, metrics, and effectiveness because what gets measured gets managed. I'm your host, Jake Sanders. Most marketing teams are drowning in data in the middle of a decision drought. How do we handle it? We add more dashboards, more KPIs, more reports, more indecision. And the same questions keep circling the room. The common assumption is that more data solves most problems. It doesn't. What actually moves the needle is something most data-driven organizations have systematically stripped out of their process: the messy, human work of actually understanding what the data is telling you. Our guest today, Robert van Ossenbruggen, is a marketing strategist, analyst, and partner at the Commercial Works, a commercial advisory firm based in the Netherlands that builds evidence-based marketing strategies to help brands grow. Robert argues that the distance between information and a good decision isn't necessarily a data problem, it's a thinking problem. In this episode, he breaks down why jumping straight from data to decisions is a trap, what the understanding layer really is, and how marketers can start asking better questions instead of just producing better-looking reports. If your team has more data than it knows what to do with, this episode's for you, so let's get to it. Robert van Ossenbruggen, welcome to the show. It's been a long time coming. How are you, sir?
Well, very good, Jake. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
But you people don't know this, but I've been following Robert for years on LinkedIn, always saying something sharp, smart, intuitive, insightful. I'm sharing it internally. It's just a kind of joy to have someone that I sort of look up to here online in front of me and for the listening audience. So thank you for your continued work. Just helping people think differently about data, which is what we're going to talk about today. Data. You know, there's so much of it, Robert. We have more data than we ever have. So this episode is about making decisions with data. We have all the data. We have it. Why are we still struggling to make good decisions?
That is a big question, Jake. First of all, thank you for the very warm welcome. Those are very nice words.
Thank you.
I'm really happy that people enjoy my posts because there's a lot of time going into it. But it's it's just not only advertising myself. It's also, it helps me. Writing posts helps me write. Sort of order my own thoughts.
Yeah.
So why are we still struggling? I think it has a lot to do with the assumptions we have about data. So what I see in lots of organizations, whether I do advisory work or training work, it often comes down to that we have this idea that if we have the data, if we have hard data, hard numbers, we can draw hard conclusions. It's not like that at all. So there is this journey between data and decisions that takes a lot of effort and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and debating and synthesizing and contextualizing and hypothesizing and all that. And we are a bit uncomfortable with those, what I call the softer parts of analysis. Because we are so much focused on the measurability and the objectivity and the efficiency and the accountability and all that. That is what for me, strong data cultures sort of signal. Everything needs to be objective and all that. And I think that is really in the way and sort of killing everything that is not measurable and everything that is not accountable. And that is actually usually where the value is created, in the debating, in the hypothesizing, in the struggle. Where is this friction? What are the trade-offs? And that part we are sort of not really comfortable with. So we think, we have the data, then we know what to do. So more data is better. So we don't filter. So we drown in the data. And we keep on, pushing for more dashboards, more KPIs, more frequently shared KPI reports, etc. but it's mostly a distraction.
And it's based on assumptions, which I think is really interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking data leads to decisions, destiny. But data is actually democracy. You have to have a democratic. I would say, like, the reason why it's probably not going well is because we don't want to have a democratic sort of panoply of discussions and stuff. Do you think there's some sort of hiding, hidden inability? Like, it's clear we can't have a conversation and get anywhere. So why would I try and have a conversation about data?
I'm not sure that is really the problem. I think that there is maybe it has a lot to do with the history of data-driven marketing or data-driven decision
That's
making.
the next question is data-driven. What, everybody's data-driven. What separates, mere reporting from real analysis? I mean, let's get it.
Most organizations are not really explicit in the difference between analysis and a KPI report. They think they're sort of the same thing. Maybe not, consciously or explicitly, but what I notice a lot when I talk to clients or talk to people in my training sessions is that if you really zoom out and talk about this, what we are talking about today, then most of the people recognize the struggles and recognize where it's coming from. But we have, over the past 2 decades or so, we have sort of created a system, a data-driven system that is, you can find it everywhere. It's in the tools, it's in the assumptions, it's in the workflows, it's in the roles, it's in the incentives.
It's even in
everywhere.
it's even in your personal life, on your watch or, analytics runs.
But, what I think we should do or acknowledge more is that, first of all, data is just one ingredient in the decision-making puzzle. It's not the ingredient, and once we have the data, you have the right data, you do the right analysis, then you know what to do. It doesn't work that way because we have this, what I just said, those softer parts of the decision-making process, and they take a lot of time. And they take a lot of effort and they take a lot of domain knowledge. So we need to be experts. It's sort of crazy when you think about it, where if you see, how many juniors, especially at agency side, are sort of responsible to, get to these insights of really strategic questions. And they have no clue. They have not the experience. They might have some analytical capabilities, but they don't have that contextual knowledge that you need to, solve these kind of difficult problems. And it's also the problem that we sort of assume that, you distill an insight from a data set and then you deliver it at someone's door. There's the insight, and now good luck with it. And I go on to the next project. But it doesn't work that way,
I mean, it happened. Yeah, that's just how it goes. Everyone goes to conferences, gets all the information. None of you are going to do anything with it. Everyone has all the information on how to run a business, blah, blah, blah. You're not going to do this stuff. Like, it's hard work seeing things through. You mentioned earlier, analysis begins when you ask why. Like, how important is that why question? And why aren't we asking why more?
Well, I think it's the most essential question of an analysis. But as soon as you sort of, define analysis as producing the numbers, and again, this is not what we do explicitly, but it's often, how the system works. Share those KPI reports, share the dashboards, and everyone can do their own analysis because the dashboard has all the data. Yes, it has all the data, which is great as a starting point. But then the analytical process starts. And it should start with, continuously asking, why do we see this thing go up? And why do we see this thing go down? And why is this group differently from the rest? Why is that? So yeah, I think, but that takes time. It takes domain knowledge. It takes hypothesizing. We need to maybe have additional data sources. Talk to an expert. Talk to a client. All that kind of stuff takes time. It takes effort.
It takes time and effort, but I'm also wondering, that's why people don't do it. Like you were saying, it starts with assumptions, and you're just like, man, if the truth is that I have to sort of get in there, ask why. Now I have to find extra data to sort of like think about this and curiously go down these rabbit holes. We don't have money. We don't have budget. No time. And you're like, well, but so just give me a KPI, just go. It seems like maybe speed and urgency might be some of the things why we're not. Why do we think we have to work so fast? Why?
Well, usually what I see when there is an obsession with data-driven, there's also an obsession with efficiency. And it always goes out of effectiveness. So it's about doing things, thoroughly and better versus doing fast and cheap. And consistently, organizations choose faster and cheaper over better. That's just how it works. So you can ask any marketer, and he would or she would probably agree on the importance of long-term strategies. But then there's the next quarter coming up, and we need to show the performance.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the reality.
Well, and then data drives you to those things. Data, maybe you didn't think about the KPI. Maybe you didn't have this conversation.
Well, now you say something really important, Jake. The whole data-driven culture, so to speak. So the whole culture of trying to prove things, make everything measurable and accountable, drives you toward this short-term performance thing, efficiency driven kind of decision making. And I think, and again, it's all a matter of balance. It always goes at the expense of something else. And in this case, it goes at the expense of long term, at the expense of effectiveness, at the expense of doing things more thorough, really understanding, rather than just filling up the KPI templates.
Understanding. There's something that you said when we were preparing for this. Context. What I'm seeing a lot in discussions about marketing engineering now, more data, more engineering type roles for marketers. Context is the number one thing. What you said is subject matter expertise. You have domain knowledge of these things. Context is coming into more discussions. When we were preparing for the show, you shared a story about you were hired as a data analyst at an airport, and you learned something really important about context in that gig. Can you share that story?
It's not. I knew it already. I think it is a great illustration of what we should do more of, and what we should.
That's slow work. I mean, you lived it. So tell us that story.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I was doing an interim job as a commercial analyst at Schiphol Airport, and the guy. It was already a client of mine, and there was this good analyst leaving, excellent analyst actually leaving, and they knew they had trouble finding a substitute. And so they asked me, can you, do this job until we have someone else? So I had the privilege to work with this analyst. And what I think is what makes this a great story is that this guy he was a great analyst in a technical sense. He knew his way through Power BI and spreadsheets and knew all the technical details of what's going on under the hood. All those things that you would expect from an analyst. But in addition, and this is what I think made him an excellent analyst, is that he invested in relationships with all his stakeholders at marketing and sales, the shop holders. And that takes a lot of time, and from an outside perspective, it might look like he was just chit-chatting at the coffee machine. Right. But that is so much important work. He's building relationships. He's hearing all these things, what's going on. And he builds domain knowledge while he is investing in those relationships. And that pays back enormously, because when some number is off and everyone is confused and asking questions, this guy knows the answers. Yeah, and that's not because he has these hard analytical skills, of course, also, but in addition, it is this softer layer, these soft skills that he has invested in, that makes him a really great analyst. And I think we should acknowledge that softer part so much more. I think that is the lesson in that story.
I love it. And walking the floor is an old, executive tip. For leaders, you got to go walk the floor, shake the hands, look at the people. How do you think marketers can walk the floor? I love this idea of relationships. I feel silly asking you, how do people form these relationships inside? Besides being friendly and being a normal human, what the hell? A lot of people don't choose to do that.
I think, Jake,
and it wasn't a strategic. He wasn't doing this for a business decision. He was being a nice guy, and he just happened to make himself good in the process. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not extracting things from people. I don't know. I'm just thinking,
no. It's not transactional like that.
Right.
But I think it's what we need to do as an industry. We need to acknowledge more the softer, messy layers of decision making, because we are very good at sort of pretending or creating the illusion that we have these fantastic, neat, systematic workflows, and we have this objective data. So we create this illusion of objectivity, and everything is systematic and logical. But meanwhile, there is politics, there is hidden agendas, there is our cognitive biases and fallacies. So these are the more messy layers that are also part of reality. And then there's also a lot of things that we do not measure and we do not know, and we need to fill in those gaps. And also that part is a bit messy, and I think organizations are really good at sort of hiding those messy parts to keep up that illusion of objectivity. I believe if we acknowledge that softer, messy part more, that's part of reality, it can actually improve the decision-making process.
Well, so just imagine that you're behind enemy lines, Robert, and all these people are data-driven. They don't have time to hear about soft skills. None of your coworkers want to hear this. What's a person to do in that situation?
I think what I notice when I do, for example, data literacy training or data storytelling training, that there is a lot of interest in these kind of things, and especially data storytelling has been far more popular for the last few years, and for a good reason, I think.
Right.
Because most organizations have sort of discovered now we have all these dashboards and we're more confused than ever. So what's missing here?
Well, didn't OpenAI, they were hiring someone at $350,000 to tell them what the data told them. I'll help you.
So there is this. I think most people working with data on a daily basis, whether you are a researcher or a data analyst or a data scientist, or you are on the other side, making these decisions as a marketer, or you're more on the finance or the sales side. I think most people recognize the issue with sticking to the numbers. There's this little framework that I use a lot in my training work, and it's a little value chain when we work with data and try to make sense of that and make smarter decisions. So we start with this data layer, and we aggregate it and slice and dice, and that's what we find in our spreadsheets and in our dashboards. Then we get to the information layer. But then we have to make sense of that, understand the data before we can make a decision at the top of the chain. Now, what I see is that we often, not explicitly, but it is what I observe, is that we try to jump from information to decisions. So we skip the understanding layer. And that is just impossible. But that is exactly the layer that takes effort and time and debate and etc., which we think is very inefficient, which we think is very subjective, and subjective is a dirty word. We want to get
very
rid of
dirty,
that.
very dirty.
Yeah, but the understanding layer is where the value is created. It's the most valuable part before you can make a decision.
It's context.
And you can't skip it. You can't go from it's context, among others. It's putting things together, connecting the dots. It's also the layer where we hypothesize. Could it be this? Okay, and how do we find out if it is or not? It's a thinking and judgment and creativity layer that we want to get rid of. And I think we should acknowledge that part a lot more.
I think we should acknowledge it more. And it feels very empirical. It feels very science. It feels very, I have an idea, but let me find out if my idea is bad. I don't see a lot of people doing that. They want to find out their idea and prove that it works. It's confirmation bias in action. Enjoy it, kids. But the point is, you have to disprove your thought before you can work to prove it. There's a lot of hard kind of science stuff that people don't want to do. I think it isn't necessarily coming with a thought. It's getting the wherewithal to talk yourself down and make sure you know what you're saying before you start talking. Because I used to just talk a lot. And then I said, hold on, don't talk. Because they're either going to blame you or they're going to make you do a bunch of work. Wait until you know exactly what you want to say, and then it helps. But how do you get people, if they found something meaningful inside data, something bad or something good, how do you, what's your advice for getting that person to help other people see it? Is it not just look, this is important? How do you sort of advocate for the data story?
Well, I think it starts with acknowledging that we need a data story, and that we not just need an analysis, And I have a bit of,
Wait, tell me, how is this? Analysis and a data story, aren't they the same, everyone would say?
Well, analysis is a finding, and a data story is a lot more than that. I think a data story has structure, it has narrative, it has the context, it has the answers to the why question. And eventually it also, ends up with okay, and now that means that we're going to need to do this, this, and this.
Like a moral of the story, yeah.
So data storytelling is sort of a big phrase. Well, it's a small phrase, but it means a lot of things.
Big action, right.
But I think it starts with acknowledging that the analysis is the starting point, not the end point.
That's it. Most people just get off of the data layer, the information layer, and then I put on knowledge layer, wisdom layer, because that's how it goes. Yeah, we just go straight to wisdom, or we look at data. I mean, it's just so insane. We skip these things. Give me you've worked with a lot of folks. Can you give me a Cinderella story with someone who was no, it's got to be like this? You gave them some advice and they came to a conclusion. And do you have a horror story? What does it mean to ignore those soft things? What is the hard evidence that that's a bad thing to do?
In my approach, the way I have learned to work with clients, there is no way around it. No way around the soft layer, because I will ask the necessary questions that the client realizes, okay, we can't jump from information to decisions. We really need to understand what's going on. So it is, getting questions, simple, sometimes really simple questions like, okay, what is the definition here? And sometimes, more often than not, they have to look it up, which is already sort of a red flag.
An orange flag. It's an orange flag.
It's an orange flag. It's asking questions. Okay, we think it could be this. What else could it be? Have alternative hypotheses. And how do we know? And I don't think analysis should end up with 100% certainty, because we usually have too many information gaps. But the least we can do is that with the time and the data that we do have, do as good a job as possible. And usually, and what I, as opposed to producing the data, producing the KPI report, and move on to the next project. And that is, I think, a result of how we have organized data in a lot of organizations. You have the data people, the data professionals, and they are, sort of in sort of a client-supplier relationship with the stakeholders. And what we should do actually is turn that around, and instead of have this hierarchical stakeholder relationship that says, "Hey, I want this data from you guys," and the data guys say, "Okay, yeah, we're gonna start to do some coding, build a dashboard or whatever, add a feature, add a filter, whatever." We should have more sort of partnerships where we both acknowledge each other's expertise and do the messy thing, the synthesizing, the hypothesizing, the contextualization together, because the data guys really know what to find in the data and what the limitations are, blah, blah, blah. And the stakeholders usually know much more about the context. And if you respect each other in that expertise that you have, then you can actually together, craft those insights. But it's not something. An insight is not something we just deliver at the door of the stakeholder.
I love it, because your stakeholder reports. That's the whole thing. Have you shown shareholders through your reports? I think, man, it's sad, but it's also true, and it's also, how are we going to fix this? If you feel like you're a marketer out there, you're just siloed up, is the thought maybe ask, what's some action advice for somebody who feels trapped in their analysis? Maybe they're trapped to some KPI that they're not 100% sure about. What's your advice for this person? How can they sort of start tunneling their way out, maybe creating some of those shared relationships, What's your advice for somebody who might be feeling cramped?
Well, I think it starts with discovering that it doesn't always take really lots of time. Sometimes a phone call of 5 minutes with a stakeholder or with an expert or with a client or with a customer or with somebody from the who's a call center agent.
Yeah, some client-facing thing, right?
Yeah, someone who talks to clients every day,
right,
and who has a lot of knowledge, what is going on. Sometimes it's just, that is enough, that 5-minute phone call to get a bit of context, and then you can move on. And if you make a habit to do that a couple of times during a project, instead of, I need to finish this project before I share it with my stakeholder, then you have a different flow in your working, right. Which is much more based on, do I understand this? So instead of what I think is missing more and more is curiosity. Research and analytics should, in theory, always start with a curiosity. What is going on? What is going on in this process? Yeah. And somehow, because of all the tools and the kind of decisions we have made along the way, it is about production of KPIs and dashboards. And it took away all the oxygen to really be curious and understand our actions and processes. And I think that needs to come back.
And it made me think, if a business had all the time in the world to get it right, they would do these things. If they had all the time in the world, you would take the soft approach. You would do the long term. But it just seems like people don't see a runway. They just are, is efficiency, sure. But if they had time, they would love to have data scientists give them the good stuff and work on this. But they think they don't have time.
Yeah, but we have also created that because we are so busy with more dashboards, make more KPIs, more frequently sharing those reports. And if you really, start asking questions about all this data that we share, which ones have really driven decisions? Then probably it's going to be silent for a while because we really have to think hard about that question. So I think, I'm pretty sure that we can free up a lot of time to do, the softer parts of analysis, as we just labeled it, if we stop thinking that more data is better, because it doesn't work that way. More data usually is more distraction.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is coming from a data scientist who loves data, who wants to just do nothing but play with data all day. Man, if you got too much, it's not going to help you. I want to get back to how you transmit your information. Being on LinkedIn, it's seriously one of my favorite places to learn. You always have insightful takes about decisions and data. This is like your wheelhouse. I just want to know, why do you spend so much time sharing what you've learned? What has the reaction been? And what advice do you give to other people who want to have an opinion about marketing? Because most people, the opinion is number go up, done. What's another opinion you might have about marketing? You choose to say those things. What's the reaction been? And what's your advice for people who might want to say something, but they don't?
Okay, that's quite a few questions.
I'm sorry, it's a compound question. I do it all the time.
First, to set the record straight, I'm not a data scientist.
A data science man.
I see myself as an evidence-based marketing consultant who happens to know a lot about data.
That's better.
And I look a lot of data, but my starting point is always decision-making and then the data, and not the other way around. Okay, and I think that is part of the answer. Part of the things that we just discussed over the past half hour. It should always start with, what are the questions that we want to answer? And I think, there are a couple of people out there that have, made suggestions to the phrase data-driven. Because I think data-driven is a word that sort of stimulates you to start with the data. And if we start with the data, we also usually start with the technology. But it should always start with the best business questions that we want to answer. And so, for example, Professor Stefano Pantoni and Bart de Lange, they have written a book, Decision-Driven Analytics, which I think is a great phrase. Because it turns around the value chain, data, information, understanding, decisions. We start with the decisions and work our way down from there, which I think makes a lot more sense than starting with the data and the technology. And just, Sebastian Wernicke is a German data scientist who just published a book called Data Inspired, which I think is also sort of signaling the fact that data is just one ingredient. We can make decisions and they are inspired data, but there's a lot more than that. So it starts with acknowledging, there's more than just the data and information layer. Actually, the value is created in those layers above.
So give me some advice on people manufacturing or engineering opinions on marketing and data that askew up to the right. As long as we're growing, as long as the number's going up, it's all good. No one has an opinion on marketing other than that. How do you give people, what's your advice on, well, I'll probably tell you, it's curiosity. I'll probably tell you, it's, relationships, talking to people, that soft skill. What if people have an opinion and they want to say something? How do you help them take that data and come to a good decision?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. So
People
are we
online.
talking?
Yeah, I'm just talking about general marketing practitioners. You
Yeah,
know,
okay.
like you have an opinion about the soft skill, power of data, decision driven
Yeah,
rather than
and
data.
someone is coming up and he says the opposite of that.
And that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
some people are wondering, how do I develop an opinion other than number go up? Period. That's what I want to know. Because most people are like, marketing's good and everything. Yeah. Soft skills. The number's got to go. If the number doesn't get bigger, we're done. So it doesn't matter if you have soft skills. It doesn't matter if you have like fun approaches or insights. Man, do you know what I mean? Like this is sort of maybe I'm venting, you know? But,
I have to admit, I have a hard time communicating with people like that because, occasionally I encounter people that are really holding on to that data-driven dogma. As you say, it's about the numbers, and let's not bullshit around.
Right.
I think if you get your hands dirty and really go into the data with that person and start asking all those questions, I think you must come to the conclusion that you don't know everything, that there are knowledge gaps, that we haven't measured everything, that we have trade-offs. Yeah, we can do more of this, but that it goes at the expense of that. Long-term, short-term, risk, opportunity. There are all these trade-offs that we need to acknowledge.
Right.
And there's not one right answer.
No.
So sometimes we just have to make a choice. Rather than relying, this is what the data tells us, because I think that is a naive assumption. The data doesn't tell us shit. We have to make the data speak.
Yeah, but I mean, it's so amazing from the beginning of this conversation to the end. I'm a total convert here. Data-driven sounds insane to me. Like, it just sounds crazy. It just sounds like someone selling data wants you to drive hey, get your data. I need to make decisions. So I love this switch. I think this is amazing. You are so fantastic, but we have to let you go. People have lives, Robert. I want them to connect with you, learn more about you online. How can they do that, Robert?
Well, they can look me up on LinkedIn and connect with me, of course. And there's one of the reasons I write all these posts is that because I also learn a lot from the comments, as an example, this week I wrote a post and it had a scatter plot in them, and someone asked, I don't really understand, and I was really grateful that someone was, just saying that, because that was totally my fault. I have, produced a zillion scatter plots in my life, totally. So it's a sort of a curse of knowledge that I have a hard time imagining what it's like not to understand what a scatter plot is like. But it's sort of an unusual chart, so you have to explain what a scatter plot is. Those are just a little example of how I also learn from getting stuff out there and getting a response.
Yeah, is there a website for you too that they can check out?
Sure, they can always go to the website, thecommercialworks.eu, which is our website. We are a marketing consultancy. We have all these kinds of different expertise. I'm obviously more into the data, but my co-partners all have these other expertise. And what binds us is that we're all evidence-based. And I think our discussions in marketing should be more about evidence rather than data. I think that is a good way to close this. Evidence is not the same as data, and if we have have a keener eye for evidence and what it takes to be convinced that a hypothesis is true or not, we wouldn't be so obsessed with all this data and say, well, we need some data, but we need a lot more than that.
Cheese or chocolate?
Are you ready?
Sure, shoot.
Cheese or chocolate?
Chocolate, definitely.
no question. He didn't. Don't even question it. Okay. Hamlet or ham omelet?
Ham omelet.
Are you?
Yeah, sorry.
It's a weird question. Never mind. Moving on.
I'm sort of, so expecting all these, still data and marketing related questions. But no, we're
it's
past
ham
that,
omelet.
aren't we?
Hamlet. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Pepper grinder or pepper shaker?
Ooh, tough one. Grinder.
You like the fresh cracked?
Exactly.
Yeah. Get out of here with that dry old pepper. Clowns. Are they scary or are they merry?
They're scary. Yeah.
Is that data backed?
Data driven or trauma driven?
In a clown car. That's terrifying. There's 30 of them in there. Okay. Real-time dashboard or static presentation?
Neither.
You can't say neither.
Then the least worst option is the dashboard, I think.
Really? Oh, real time. Okay, fine. Rob, you live on the edge. I love it. Okay. Finally, and I don't know if this is contentious or not. Oh, this is actually nice. It gets a sense of your adventure. Deep sea diving or parachuting?
Deep sea diving, definitely.
Really?
Yeah.
Why so adamant?
Well, I have done deep sea diving a couple of times, and I thought it was amazing. It was not really deep sea, but not deeper than 20 meters. But I think that was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And parachutes, that's a different league, man, in terms of... Yeah, I don't know.
What's the data on that? Huh?
Another life, maybe. Another life.